Hey, I'm Bruce Naylor, answering your technology questions. Today, I thought we would do a video. Let's talk a little bit about Apple and the Mac product line. So we're not going to be talking about phones or tablets, but we're going to be talking about the Mac. Specifically, I get asked a lot of questions about Apple and where do I see the future of the Mac going, particularly in the hardware and what's coming around the corner. So I just thought I'd take a few minutes and talk about some thoughts that I would share with you about the current product line and maybe what we can expect in the future. Now, there's been a lot of articles being written about why Apple should maybe outsource the Mac Pro to other manufacturers, seeing how it appears on the surface anyway that Apple has abandoned the Mac Pro. I mean, it was introduced in December of 2013. That's when they started actually shipping them. And it's not been updated since. As a matter of fact, it's been over 1,073 days since the Mac Pro was last updated. I, however, am in a different camp. I believe that Apple will do at least one more update to the Mac Pro. Now, it won't be a major design overhaul, but rather an upgrade to the internals. Now, exactly what CPU they will use is uncertain. There is no V6 or Kaby Lake version of the Xeon CPUs that they're using currently on the market. So that's kind of a wild card. I do expect a replacement of the multiple USB ports with USB-C ports, with Thunderbolt 3. So I expect the upgraded internals. When do I expect this to happen? I'm going to say by the end of the first quarter of next year. So by the 30th of March or 31st of March of 2017, I expect the new Mac Pro the Mac Pro to be updated. The next device I get asked about quite a bit is the Mac Mini. Now this one, the future to me is very, very murky. This has not, by all practical standards, been a very successful machine for Apple the last couple years. It was last updated in October of 2014, so over 772 days since the Mac Mini was last updated. Future is very murky on this. I will say this, if there's not an update or a refresh of the Mac Mini by the end of March next year, then I look for that machine to be discontinued. Well, what would take its place? Well, I'm thinking the 21.5-inch iMac would be the successor to the Mac Mini. Obviously a different type of machine, but generally speaking, I think the 21.5-inch iMac would be the entry-level desktop, thus eliminating the Mac Mini. We'll wait and see if, in fact, Apple does indeed refresh the Mac Mini. Let's talk a little bit about the MacBook Air. I'm really surprised that that's still for sale. I don't think it will be sometime next year. I look for the MacBook Air to be, that product line to be completely eliminated, as the MacBook is the obvious replacement for the MacBook Air. So that's kind of what I see coming down the pike, so to speak, with Apple and its hardware. I have gotten a few questions that I thought I would kind of mix into this video so we can address those as well. And the first question comes from David Morris. These questions, by the way, are all Mac related. David Morris writes, I've been saving up and waiting for the next update to the iMac. Do you think they're going to remove all the normal USB ports and remove the SD card slot? If they do, I don't think I'll buy it. Maybe just make a new PC for my music production. And of course, this is in the whole MacBook Pro update where they got rid of the SD card slot and this traditional USB ports and put USB-C ports on it. I do look for them to obviously probably drop, for the most part, the USB 3 ports that are on the iMac and replace them with USB-C. However, I anticipate they'll have at least have one USB 3 port available. No, I don't look for them to eliminate the SD card slot, because this is a desktop machine, and so it's built for a little bit different use case. Something a little bit more powerful. Desktop machines typically are going to be more powerful than a laptop, and most people use them maybe in a little bit different way. Not always. I mean, I use the MacBook Pro really as a desktop machine right now. But I think the thought process behind that is that the iMac is going to be for more professional use. By the way, I'm going to just kind of put this out here. If for some reason Apple discontinues the Mac Pro, maybe, just maybe, they may introduce a iMac Pro. And that might be kind of an interesting machine, but more speculation on that down the road. So no, I think they'll keep the SD card slot. I think they'll keep at least one USB 3 port, but I do look for you given USB-C ports instead of the multiple USB 3 ports on there. Next question comes from Matthew Moore. Matthew's been a good friend of the channel. Love his stuff, by the way. Did a lot of stuff on Linux. How you doing, Matthew? Who writes, what is a good source to find used or refurbished Macs for those of us who can't afford a new one? Great question. And I actually reply back in the comments. And, you know, there's Craigslist and there's eBay. There's also Mac Sales or OCW. They have, you know, machines that they go through and make sure they're all up to snuff and good stuff. However, there is one thing that I failed to mention, and I was reminded by a video done by Wendell, who used to be on Tech Syndicate. Now it's called Level 1 Techs, his channel. And it's a very good point. I actually got my Mac Pro off of an ad in Craigslist, but what was important was the owner, prior owner, worked for a university, and the university has a graphics arts department and all that, and they buy Macs, and they had a lot of Mac Pros, and, you know, he got one when they, you know, did their refresh, and he turned around and sold it to me. And if you watch the video on Level 1 Tech, I put the link down below. They talk about going to auctions, government auctions, university auctions, and looking for a used Mac that way. Now that obviously takes, you're trading your time for money, because then you're, you know, when you go onto eBay, you're going to Craigslist, whatever, people generally get them all cleaned up and make sure they're all ready to go. When you buy from auction, you get what you get. And so you need to be much more familiar with the machines and, hey, does, you know, okay, so the power supply is bad. No big deal. I can replace it. I can fix it. It needs RAM. We'll get RAM. So you're trading, kind of swapping that time for money on the savings on the machines. And Wendell goes into detail about buying actual pallets of used computers. I've actually bought machines myself at an auction. So auctions are a good way to really get tech super cheap, but you got to know what you're doing, and you got to be willing to invest the time. So Craigslist, eBay, Mac Sales, and all these are going to be for people who don't want to invest the time, so they're willing to pay more cash for the product. But auctions are a good way to go. The next question comes from Shirak Sharma. Now, I don't think English is Shirak's native language, so his question boils down to this. Can the 2015 MacBook, is it a good choice to buy if your primary need is for high-end 4K video editing? The answer is going to be no. This is not what that machine was ever really intended to do. Can it do it? Yes. Jonathan Morrison made an excellent video editing 4K video on a MacBook. It can be done, but remember, you're going to be stuck in that Final Cut Pro 10 or X as your video editor, because it's so highly optimized to work with OS 10 and the Mac. Any other video editors, such as like Adobe Premiere, HitFilm, Resolve, all that's going to just really run terribly on that MacBook. Final Cut Pro, that's going to work pretty well on the MacBook. I mean, it's going to work. Let's put it that way. It could be somewhat usable, but I really wouldn't recommend it. That's not what it's designed for. Your money would be better spent. You're talking $1,200 for a MacBook versus, say, or maybe $1,300 for the MacBook. Let me look up that price on here. The MacBook, yeah, it's $1,300 versus $1,500 for the 13-inch entry-level MacBook Pro. And I would recommend that you spend that extra $200 and get the MacBook Pro. You're going to get a much more powerful computer, and it's going to run Final Cut Pro 10 much more beautifully. You know, these are nice machines, nice and thin and light, great battery life. That's the way I would recommend that you go. The MacBook, really, in my opinion, is the logical successor to the MacBook Air. For that person that wants something very, very thin, very, very light, and doesn't have the most hardcore use case for that computer. And so that's it. I hope I've answered your questions on that. And thank you so much for watching the video. I would like your opinion in the comments down below. What do you think about the future of Mac hardware? Do you think the Mac Pro should be outsourced and cloned, in other words? Is that the word I'm looking for? Yeah, I guess so. Apple did it many, many years ago. And of course, Steve Jobs returned, they ended that program. But do you think Apple would trust another company to make a Mac Pro? My personal opinion, I don't think so. I think they're very much, it would be a big problem for their brand. They're very, very careful about what they put that Apple logo on. So let me know in the comments down below what you think. Bruce Naylor, I'll talk to you later.